Welcome. You're watching the Moody Lawyer. Justice served with experience and integrity.
Hello and welcome to the Moody Lawyer with attorney Josh Moody. Thanks so much for joining us today because we are going to discuss what you should do immediately after an accident and how you can protect your rights. Josh, thanks so much for being here. Great to see you again.
Hey, great for having me again.
All right, so what are the first things someone should do after being involved in a car accident or a personal injury for that matter?
That's a good question. I've talked about this before in some of our other podcasts. I would encourage everybody to check them out. But the number one thing I tell people, whether it be in a podcast, in a book, online, you come into my office, we're talking at a bar. The number one thing after an accident, most important, is your health and the safety of others. Your case is not worth as much as anything as your life or endangering other people. So when there is an accident, the number one thing you got to do is get emergency services there, whether it be for you or for somebody else, because protecting your rights almost becomes secondary. Because if you're not healthy and you're not okay, and there's a life-threatening injury, you've got to take care of yourself and those other people who may even. And I know it's hard, but the jerk who just ran the red light, you got to call 911 for that person. You know, we don't want to see people suffer unnecessary injuries for things like money. And I know a personal injury attorney actually saying that, but life and your health is more important. Now, that being said, the first thing you need to do after calling for emergency services is really documenting the scene and the injury and what really happened. You don't have to worry about trying to piece together everything as soon as the accident occurs. We all have phones. The number one thing I tell people is take as many pictures as you can. Take as many pictures as you can of everything. A lot of people, all they do is they take a picture of their car. Take a picture all the way. I'll have 100 pictures of their car.
Every little corner,
every scratch. And I won't have one of the other person's car, or maybe one just with their license plate. Take pictures of their car too. Not because we care that their car is damaged, but their damage can show how the accident occurred and prove that they were in fact at fault.
Right. Helps tell the story.
You're protecting, yes, you're protecting yourself. When I give the pictures to this happens a lot where I give my case or my pictures to our traffic expert and they're like, I don't have a picture of the side door. I need to get a picture so that I can match them up and show, but we never got a picture. So sometimes we can get that through discovery if the other side has it. That's a common mistake that people make. Second most common mistake. Take pictures of the roadway and everything around it. A lot of times you will find marks and evidence and debris in the road that show where the accident occurred, or what we call the area of impact or the point of impact. Take pictures of the road, the other people in the roadway, how it looked, because what also happens here in California, especially up here in lovely Apple Valley, there's a lot of road work that goes on. The road that exists today, the 2-lane road that exists today, may be a 4-lane road 2 years from now. Yeah, they're constantly, new traffic lights, new stoplights, new warning signs. Take as many pictures of everything as you can, as soon as you can. A lot of times people say, well, I didn't want to because the fire truck was in the way. Take the picture anyways. You'd rather have too many than too little.
Right. Yeah. And to your point too, we all have phones, so we all have cameras in our pocket with plenty of storage usually. So you take as many as you can.
And if you're in a car or you're in a vehicle and maybe a passenger was taken by ambulance or something, take pictures of those. Those are great pictures. Seeing somebody loaded up into an ambulance and then here they are, here the defense comes 6 months, a year later, 2 years later, says they weren't really that injured. It sure looked like they were.
Yeah.
So take those,
and obviously they were.
Yeah. I mean, obviously if you're the one who's knocked unconscious or you're the one who's in the gurney going to you're not going to be taking pictures. I get that. But this is it. This is more of a general overview. If you're in the vehicle with other people, do those. That's probably the biggest. I don't want to say it's an error because it's hard because I'm not there. It's hard for me to judge when I'm not on I'm not the person who was in the accident. I'm not on the ground. I'm coming in a few days later. But that's the number one thing to try to remember. Because and to kind of piggyback on that, because a lot of things we can find out later. If you didn't get the license plate number, we'll find it. It might take a few weeks, but we'll find. Might take a few days, but we'll get it. If you got even if you got the guy's license plate number but you miss some of, there are things we can find later. But always, especially if there's more than one person, try to figure out who the driver was, if you can remember, and make sure you document that and take a picture, or make sure the police know, because that's happened, I wouldn't say quite a bit, but it's happened several times where somebody else tries to take the blame for the driver because maybe the driver had a suspended license, maybe the driver was uninsured, maybe the driver was drunk, maybe a sober person. Yeah. So it has happened. And the best evidence is my client is like, no, that person was driving, and telling the police who show up. So those are probably the biggest things to do immediately afterwards.
You talked about documenting evidence. Obviously that's, not always possible. If you have an accident where you're pretty hurt, or you're just, for whatever reason, you're unable to take documentation. Is it still possible to get the necessary documentation after the fact, days later even?
Yeah, it depends on what it is, but sure. There are records. If a car was involved and there was an accident and the police were out, we'll get that information. Even if you don't, a lot of times people don't get the police number, especially if you have to go to the hospital. If you get knocked, especially if you're like knocked unconscious and you, even just for a few seconds, they're going to take you to the hospital because you got to get checked out. Traumatic brain injury, concussions, those are big issues. They're not just going to let you walk away. And you shouldn't walk away. You should be checked out. But typically, it takes about 30 days to get a police report, and that will give us a lot of the information we need. We also have access to, we can request records from DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. But again, those are not instant results, but those are the things that work themselves out. And that's what we get paid to do. So don't worry about it. But get as much information as you can without injuring yourself or injuring somebody else.
If someone's in an accident and they feel fine, should they still go see their doctor? Like, just to make sure, is there, I've heard that before, like, hey, always go and check it out just in case, your adrenaline's pumping or whatever, and you haven't, you don't know, like people find out they're hurt days later. Like how important is that to make sure you get checked out?
Absolutely. It's very important, because a lot of times you don't feel the injuries until days or a week later, because it's an adrenaline rush and your body is in, it's in protection mode. A lot of times, sometimes tears, like a tearing a tendon, tearing a muscle. You may not feel it for a couple of days. You may not have known it. And I can't tell you how many times I've had clients where they're like, my shoulder's still kind of sore, but it's fine. And then they finally go to a specialist and they finally get the right test. And it's like, yeah, it's torn. Something's torn. I don't want to. Yeah, it may need surgery. It may not, whatever. And, we have medical records from, a few months or a year earlier that show that tear wasn't there. So, obviously it was from the car accidents when you started feeling the pain. Vehicles today are very safe. They're much safer than 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's still 3-ton pieces of steel coming in contact with another 2-ton pieces of steel at a rate of 80 feet per second. When you're going about 55 miles an hour, you're doing 80 feet a second. To say that you have no injury, you at least have to be checked out. Now, obviously you're being impacted, but you need to be checked out, especially, the higher the rate of speed, the bigger the car. Even if you are seatbelted, these are still moving parts. The whole object in motion tend to stay in motion, objects at rest tend to stay at rest. And when there's a quick change in the two, that's how injuries occur.
Right. And what kind of legal protections are there for accident victims in California?
Obviously, the number one is to recover for your damages. Number one is health, safety. Those are number one. Typically, though, the one that needs the quickest resolution is vehicle damage. Those are pretty standard. Those are, cars have a value, and those are your rights, and making sure that the other person's insurance pays for it. But a lot of times they don't have enough. A lot of times they don't have coverage, or they don't have enough coverage for your nice car. So your insurance then will kick in depending on the policy that you pay for. But you do want to get that. It is your right to have your car fixed at a place you like to have, a place you want, that you are comfortable with. So that's probably a big one that kind of gets overlooked a lot. And ultimately you're not, there's a misconception that the other side needs to get you medical attention and the other side needs to make sure you're okay. And they don't make sure you're okay, and they don't care. That's not their job. It's not their duty. They got to pay for your bills. They got to pay for your medically necessary treatment, and they got to reimburse you for that. A lot of times people will come in 4, 5, 6 months after an accident and say, man, I was talking to the other insurance company and they haven't done anything for me. Well, they don't have to. They're not going to. You need to get yourself taken care of, and it's your right to get that reimbursement from from the other side, which is, and a lot of times that is financially difficult, especially in today's day and age, in today's economy. A lot of people don't have spare money to even for deductibles and co-pays. So that's why we advance a lot of the fees. We advance a lot of the costs. We work with doctors who do the same. We work with different specialists and MRIs and x-rays who do the same, because it is your right to get reimbursed. But if you don't have the money to pay up front, then that doesn't do you any good. And the other side's not going to pay up front. They don't have to. And I've never heard of anybody doing that.
I'm not surprised. How soon should someone contact an attorney after an accident?
As soon as you're physically able. And if you're not physically able, meaning you're an extended hospital stay, extended surgery, something like that, we can either come to you, or we have forms. We can send it to you to your phone. You can fill things out on your form, and we can start investigating the crash right away. That happens quite a bit. I had a case, a pretty bad one, a few years ago. It was Christmas Eve. It was five plaintiffs, but one of them was in the hospital for several days. But we got out there right away and started, working with the police and doing the traffic investigation as to what happened, because there were some issues as to what actually happened. I mean, I knew they were not at fault, but what exactly, that's not enough. We need to find out so we can say this is what happened. So yeah, we were working on it while he was still in the hospital. The sooner the better.
Yeah. Understood. Well, this is all great information. On the next episode, we're going to discuss uninsured motorists, which is a pretty vast topic, and I'm excited to get your take on all of that. Can you give us a quick teaser on uninsured motorists?
Well, if you live in California, you know that there's a lot of people out there without driver's licenses and without insurance. Right. And you're going to want to hear this episode, because I talked to a lot of people, a lot of successful people, a lot of people who don't necessarily work in the insurance company, and they are severely underinsured as well and don't understand how it works and the reasons why you need this insurance to protect yourself and to protect your family.
All right. Great teaser. All right. Well, don't miss the next episode. And thank you guys very much for joining us on the Moody Lawyer with attorney Josh Moody. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep up with everything on law in California. And remember, next episode is going to be a good one, so don't miss that. Josh, great to see you. Thanks for being here again.
Great to see you. Thanks.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.